Three Thick Bricks.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Three Thick Bricks, a monthly podcast which explores the musical world of Jethro Tull album by album. I'm your co-host, Robin, and I'm joined on location, live and at Beggars Farm by Brent and Adrian. How are we, fellas?
Good evening. Good, thanks.
That's good.
We're dandy, aren't we? Isn't that what we're meant to be?
Okay. I'm not dandy tonight.
Oh, okay. Right. I'll be dandy. I'll be dandy for us all.
I'm a bit under the dandy, actually. So.
Yeah.
Got your dander up?
Yeah. Dander, my dander's down.
Oh, okay. There are drugs for that kind of thing. But,
I know.
I'm a bit pissed off because I can't get this seed drill machine to work no matter how hard I try. So, yeah.
Have you checked the patent? It's all explained in there.
So this was, yes, I guess we're here to talk about the debut album by Jethro Tull, or the Mick Abrams Smash, as they're also called. This was
1968.
So, 1968. Now I've trawled and scrubbed Wikipedia for just some basic information about this was that we'll just get out of the way. So obviously debut studio album came out on the 4th of October 1968 in the UK and in 1969 in the US. It was recorded in 3 months in 1968. Lineup was Ian Anderson, Mick Abrams, Glenn Cornick and Clive Bunker. Anderson on vocals and flute, Abrams on some vocals, but mainly guitar, then obviously Cornick on bass, and then good old Clive Bunker on the drums. It was produced by Terry Ellis, who I had no idea who he was, but actually he was the co-founder of Chrysalis.
Well,
so he was a big guy.
I think basically weren't Jethro Tull there first? Almost the reason for Chrysalis.
That's how it all kicked off,
being formed. So,
yeah.
And Chris Wright being the other founder.
Yep. 38 minutes, 10 tracks, and pretty well received in the UK, but interestingly and not surprisingly, less well received in the US for, I think, some obvious reasons we'll get into when we talk about the songs themselves.
Yes.
So there you go. There's a bit of background on the album itself.
Okay, so you listed the band members. I think the really distinctive thing about Jethro Tull in this incarnation, and I actually know that there's a lot of people out there who think this was the high watermark of the band.
Wow.
So it really had two leaders, didn't it?
Yeah.
Which was not the case.
Yeah, I'd like to imagine that, before this album was made or during it or just after, there was an epic rap battle between Abrams and Anderson. And we all know who the winner was, let's face it. So
I have to say, so what just from looking at interviews and reading around, I think Mick Abrams is a bit older than the other three. Yep. He was also I think he's a very good guitarist. There's no question about that, and a very good blues guitarist. But that's what he was, and he was very fixed and set in his musical desires and his plans. And it was also that late 1960s was also the beginning of the age of the guitar god. Yep. Bands revolved around their guitarists. I know there were some personalities in Led Zeppelin, but let's face it, Jimmy Page was the star of that band. All the
Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck,
the Yardbirds Guitar Factory that put out all of these things. And just from other band members talking, it sounds like Mick Abrams assumed he was the leader of the band.
Then got a bit of a surprise.
And it doesn't sound. I don't think it was acrimonious, but he wanted to play blues. And Ian Anderson has made it quite clear that wasn't his. And I don't think we're going to review this album. I don't think it's a pure blues album, and I've listened to it quite a lot now. And I was not. I really had very little exposure to this album, except for the tracks that kind of bled through into their later live sets, and and made it onto other compilation albums like Living in the Past and things like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't really that aware of it, and I've spent quite a bit of time listening to it in preparation for this, and I am quite enamoured of it now.
Okay. Yeah, to me it was like it's almost like the band itself split in half. There's like the stuff that's kind of proto Jethro Tull that I quite like, and then there's the more bluesy stuff and the sort of instrumentally stuff, and it's just like that kind of leaves me a bit cold. So
there are four. Almost half of the tracks are if you count round or
and
instrumental.
I do.
Yes.
And whereas later it was pretty much about songcrafting. This was about music, and that's fine. Some of the tracks are very clearly blues, and not just blues, but that's sort of Chicago blues, that very American blues. Yes. And Ian Anderson has said, and he doesn't mean this the wrong way, I don't want it taken the wrong way, but he said that he didn't feel particularly American or black. And I think that was his way of saying that he was not, I think in a respectful way, that if he was going to be himself, that was not him. He couldn't pretend he was that. He had other interests in music. And Mick Abrahams had his. And the other issue that he said was that they were wanting to play all the time, and he just wanted to play 2 or 3 nights a week.
Only 2 or
local
3
clubs, and he wouldn't fly. He was afraid of flying, and he wouldn't fly, which didn't quite. Right. Which is, I think, is a way of him saying we had ambition and he didn't.
He didn't. Yeah. I completely agree with that. The album reflects sort of the bipolar nature, if you like, between the purist blues guy and the progressive. The progressiveness of Ian Anderson. And I think for me, the problem... So the reason I kind of don't like this album is that it kind of falls either into jazz, sort of very derivative jazz, or derivative blues. There's only 1 or 2 tracks on the whole album where there's a fusion that's effective between those things in a way that I would call more progressive. So I think the problem is that it ends up being... And I think it's not, it's unfair to cast too much on it because they were young guys, they were learning their craft. But the fact is that the jazz and the blues tracks are very derivative. They're a pastiche. Yeah. It's only on a couple of the tracks where there is a kind of a melding and a fusion that leads to something a bit more interesting.
So that is a little bit of a retrospective hindsight thing, though, because at that time, blues was hot. It's like it's like being a month into the Seattle grunge scene and saying, "Oh, this is all derivative." I think at the time it was something hot, and I think that makes it even more remarkable that Ian Anderson had a broader vision.
You're as you say, a young band. This is your first album. You don't know how much.
Sure.
The older and wiser people around you. You record the people doing the recording of the tracks, the managers, all those kind of people, how they would push it. I think later on, they had enough street cred that Ian Anderson could just say, "No, screw it, I'm going to write a passion play, and it'll sell fine, and you'll live with it." And the execs would go, "Oh well, you did well with Thick as a Brick, so yeah, sure, give it a go." Whereas, your first album, obviously, you're not going to get that latitude and leeway, so it's probably more like, okay, well, this is our, the songs we've got that we could sing. What do you want on there? And they go, what's this stuff? Never heard of that. Oh, this stuff's bluesy. That's what I know and like. Let's chuck those in there. Daddy-O. And that's how it would probably have got built up.
I think you're right in that sense. But I think for me, there's too much copying that I think if I look at other artists at this time who were sort of, sort of playing, like you say, blues was hot. I think the problem for me is with Mick Abrahams. He's literally copying 1920s bluesmen. Like he's literally copying without kind of really bringing anything new to the table. And Ian Anderson on many tracks is literally bringing jazz to the table, but not really and I'm not saying all the tracks are like this, but a good number of them are. And if you look at people like Van Morrison, you look at people like the Beatles, you look at other people at that time, they were doing more than just being pure derivative copies of previous work. So, and again, they were young guys and they were starting out. And it's interesting because if I look at albums, they kind of fall into two. There's those albums where people kind of emerge with their unique sound almost from the get-go, and it kind of really kind of takes people by surprise. And then there are those bands that start off sounding like other bands or don't sound like themselves, and it takes time for them to... And Jethro Tull definitely falls into the latter. You know, if you listen to... who did Parklife? Blur. The first Blur album sounds nothing like Blur. It's sort of a Manchester kind of Stone Roses thing. It's just sounds terrible because it doesn't sound like Blur. But, you know, they became Blur, whereas the Stone Roses kind of hit. I'm using that as an example. And they were like, wow, you know, but they didn't get very far. But Blur had the longevity. And I feel like... with this album, it's just, maybe I'm a bit harsh.
No, I don't know.
Harsh on them. And I just feel like they copy too much, and there's not enough originality, I think, in the tracks.
In all fairness, Glenn Cornick was saying he thinks it's an incoherent album. But he said they also, it wasn't a straight blues album because the other three of them weren't good enough to be blues musicians. So they were just playing whatever they could manage to play.
Yeah.
So are we ready to review the tracks, and we'll give a final verdict afterwards, I guess. So I don't know if you guys are interested, but I might have mentioned that yesterday on a car trip I trapped my wife and daughter in the car, and they couldn't escape. And I played This Was. We had just enough time. This is the point where I need to apologise. It did come to was brought to my attention that I did call her my current wife in the last episode, as if I was waiting for the next one. my lovely and only wife, till death do us part, which I was
could be very soon.
Could be very soon. She did dryly comment that if. That was fine, but if she could let me know when the next one was on the horizon, because she had some things to let them know.
Yes, like a time capsule which you can leave for them. Anyway,
my current wife and my current daughter were trapped.
Carry on your current podcast.
We're in your current car. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. My car. Okay, my car is current. It's my current car. Playing the currently reviewed album. And I can give you some of their feedback. I knew what my wife's feedback was going to be, although I'm not surprised that there was a little bit of an in there. But my 16-year-old daughter's, who is a J-pop fanatic, and we've talked about Jethro Tull's musical style influences. I'm pretty sure J-pop
did not rate,
was not in there. It might. Look, if they were active now, I'm sure Ian Anderson would take it on board. But no. So this is a J-pop aficionado's review,
right,
of This Was. And I might. She didn't review all the tracks, but she had some juicy contributions for some of them. So
brilliant.
I might let you know.
It's good to get the youth. The perspective of youth on
of me well. And the youth.
Yeah. So, my Sunday feeling.
This is one of the ones I knew reasonably well before hearing the album, because it is one that endured beyond.
Oh, it did, right? Okay.
They did they like to play it live, so there are quite a few live. I have a bootleg called Tunnel of Love, which I think is my only bootleg of Tull. It's a pretty good-looking bootleg, so I'm not sure that it's that rare. But it is in 1969 in Stockholm, and it must be before Stand Up was released, because they play a couple of tracks from that and mention they're from their upcoming album. But Martin Barr was the guitarist.
Okay.
So I think it might be in that.
In between.
And
sort of,
so they've only they've only just probably recorded or are recording Stand Up, and the first track on it is Sunday Feeling on this album. And Ian Anderson introduces My Sunday Feeling as a bullshit tune from their joke album.
Oh, ouch.
Meow.
Wow, really?
Wow, even I'm not going to be that harsh.
Whatever he says about it now, and I don't know whether it was
codpiece in
tongue in cheek, because a lot of his, I don't think he was wearing a codpiece anywhere, let alone his cheek at that time. But anyway, that's what he said to the audience in Stockholm. Maybe he didn't think they'd understand.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he's wondering, yeah. I like this. It's a great hangover song, really. I mean, there's not, you don't get a better song about a hangover than this one, really.
You're going for the lyrical interpretation. That's good. I'm glad you grabbed that, man.
It's subtle, but it's there. It's there.
Especially like the end vocals where he's like, sounds like he's really strung out in the last few lines.
He sounds like he's masturbating at the end. I don't know about
let's not go there.
Oh,
well, that evolved fast.
That's Sunday Feeling.
That's right. Coming up over me, yes, exactly.
I know that people have like, hangover cures they swear by. Is that yours? Don't answer. My brain will never get clean.
No, I know. I'm never. Well, I did like Sunday Feeling.
My opinion on it's changed totally now.
But I kind of liked it because it was a bit kind of, Aqualungy, how he's, and then he kind of goes,
I'm not sure I was a fan of those.
Like, okay.
The thing that struck me, I'm coming from the sound recording / singing. My years of critically acclaimed stage musical performances will stand me in good stead and make my opinion on these matters, law. But the song starts, and the first thing I hear is the amount of reverb on his voice, which is not on the other tracks, interestingly. And the first thing I think was, this is the Hangover song. Did they do this so it sounds like he's like in the bathroom? And once that thought was in my head, I thought, that they probably did it on purpose, so it feels like he's singing in the bathroom. And in fact, they may have even given him the mic to go into the bathroom to get the reverb effect. These days, of course, you just you select the track you want, and you click on a button, say give it reverb, and ta-da, it has reverb. But back in them days, you actually had to...
or frantically rush around trying to take the reverb off.
Yeah, you don't want too much reverb. This doesn't have a lot. It's still relatively subtle, but it's definitely noticeable. But they would have had to put in somehow on purpose. And
really, I do wonder, because the other thing about the recording of this album, it was actually recorded in a studio that was a big old Stone Grain silo in Chelsea.
Okay.
And apparently the acoustics were shocking, and they were only recording on a 4-track. So it might be that some of what you hear is actually the unnatural acoustics of
or they had him too far into a corner to begin with, there's too much reverb, and then they went, that actually sounded bad for the next track, let's move you across here a bit.
Yeah, it's very 60s. I mean, that kind of 60s echoey thing, isn't it, really?
Well,
it was popular.
And all songs have, when you've got the vocal lines, and when me and Brent perform together for this very show, I will put reverb on, but you kind of want it to be there just to kind of fill out the voice a bit and make it cover up a few. It helps thicken up the sound a bit and make it sound a bit better, because all songs have it these days.
Does your reverb dial go to a because I think
you
that's
can make
what
it
it's
sound
gonna
like
take.
people are like singing from the bottom of a well. You can make it as reverb as you want. You can go full on, but you don't. Basically, you want to kind of turn. Generally, what they say is you turn it up till you can kind of just notice it, and then you turn it down a notch from that. And that's not what they did here.
Right. Interesting. I think the thing that's good is, though, that they thankfully didn't start with a hardcore slow blues number. They started with something that was up tempo, that could have, it's got a bit of drive to it. It's got a bit of blues rock to it, and I think that's really, I'm glad they start with this. The thing I would say, though, we're talking before about the album, this sort of fight between the sort of progressive and the blues. The thing that is really bad about this song is the instrumental piece in the middle. It's been either mixed really badly, but the flute and the guitar and the drums just fight with each other. And to me, that's emblematic of the whole album, the way that the flute, the guitar, and the drums just don't work together in that middle. They don't gel at all. They do in other songs, but in this one, they're really fighting for each other for sort of prominence, and the guitar's coming through, then the drums, and a bit of the flute, and it's sort of a bit all over the place in that sort of middle piece.
I think that has a lot to do with their inexperience and amateurishness, that they were not good arrangers yet.
No.
Well, and if it is Chris Liss Records' first gig as well, and if it's in a non-ideal studio environment, all these things kind of add up, I guess. And
I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of the other songs that the integration between it actually is really good on some songs, but in this one, it's just all over the place. That sort of middle bit, it really is messy.
What there is in this, and I'll talk more about it later, is that it's a simple one, but there is a bass solo, very short one towards the end.
Yeah.
It's not a bad one, but I might talk more about that about Glenn Cornick in some future tracks. But there is
he's often forgotten, isn't he, in the sort of the overall?
Well, I don't think he should be. So
No.
I might talk more about him in a short while.
the other thing that struck me, I guess, because I like singing along with songs. The lyrics, and they're okay, but there's nothing particularly insightful or thought-provoking, and that doesn't really change for the whole of the rest of the album either. Obviously he hasn't really got into his lyrical stride yet.
Yep. Do you want my daughter's
yes
opinion on it? She did give it a whole 2 bars of listening before
Past judgment.
before she gave me her opinion, and her judgment was, "What is this? It's hideous." And she said, dun, 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 "Don't they know more than 2 notes?" I said, "Okay." Right, so that's the 16-year-old.
Yes.
The 16-year-old.
Well, I hope you told her
girls,
that the 3rd, 4th, and 5th notes weren't invented till the 70s.
Yes. But I don't. Let's say I don't mind Sunday.
No, I don't
Feeling.
mind it either.
I think it's apart from the schmozzle in the middle, I think it's a perfectly acceptable opener.
It's okay.
For the album.
I would listen if it came up on shuffle on my iPod. Oh, product placement again. Woof. I wouldn't.
You're a bit late.
Sorry, on my iPhone 12
iPod.
I wouldn't just skip right past it. So that's the highest praise I can give it.
Yeah. If I heard it on my Walkman, I would feel the same way.
So if I wound it up on my gramophone,
if it's on my 8-track, I'd be fine. And to be honest, there are sometimes on Sundays I do find myself humming this one. So
well, we are in fact. So this is very apt because we are recording this on a Sunday.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he must have. How did he know all those years ago?
And my feeling for Sunday feeling is I'm okay.
Yeah,
with it.
and I can imagine they would open. I don't know what they used to open with, but I can imagine they would. It feels like a good opening for a set because it's upbeat. It's
they opened that Tunnel of Love gig with My Sunday Feeling.
Yeah.
The bullshit
Only
song
presaging
from
it
Nick
by
Joe
saying his shit first and then launching right into it.
It's certainly a better way to start the album than Someday is the next one.
We're talking about this now, and I can barely remember.
Yeah,
it's pretty uninteresting. Yeah, and it's almost like a you've done me wrong, but I'm so good you're going to regret it, but in a really ham-fisted way. I don't know. I'd find it uninteresting and uninspiring.
But it's a complete pastiche. It's a complete. I mean, Big Bill Brunzi, who I didn't know. I mean, I have Robert Johnson's recordings, who was another great blues player from the 1920s. but it's a complete pastiche and copy of his, music. I mean, they're just being the sort of blues. It's so anchored in that classic 8/12 bar blues stuff.
Yeah.
And okay, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, I guess. And this is just completely anchored in that. And so
it's not. I can see that it would have formed the basis of what Mick Abrahams was interested in recording, and that's where his heart was. There's that's fine, but it just doesn't do it for me.
No.
I'm not particularly interested in that sort of blues.
No. And if I'm going to listen to that sort of blues, I play Robert Johnson or I play Bill. I want to play them and hear them play it. I don't want to hear a bunch of guys from England playing pretty much the same. You know what I mean? It's not even like they've taken it and reinterpreted it in such a way. Yeah. And whatever you say about, say, someone like Johnny Mathis. Now, I'm not a big fan of Johnny Mathis. My mum loved his stuff. But the thing that Johnny Mathis does is he takes these old songs and he completely reinterprets them, in amazing ways. But the problem with this is just take it and kind of just copy it that way.
The thing is, I think they were better than that. And I think Mick Abrahams, I think he demonstrates on this album, they were better than that.
Yeah.
I have trouble injecting anything of interest into commentary on this song. I did actually listen to it when I was out walking a few nights ago, and so I was getting it in stereo through my earphones. And what is interesting about it is that it's like a duet almost. It's got the paired voices, and one of them's obviously Ian Anderson, and one is Mick Abrahams. Right, yep. And I was just trying to sit there, work out which one it was. And eventually I realised that the guitar and one voice were coming in my right ear and the other voice was coming through the left. So Mick Abrahams must, and I think that reflects, I think it was recorded straight to 4-track in this place. So what you hear in stereo is where they were in the room. So it's Mick Abrahams you're hearing in the right ear with his guitar. And Ian Anderson
that's an interesting choice too. Like I listened to it through the headphones some of the time. This is the whole album, and through just like my sound bar the rest of the time. And their choices of when to do stereo panning and when to have there'd be the flute off to one side or not. I found it all a bit jarring, and I preferred actually listening to it just in mono generally. But it did give a very different feel, especially tracks like this where it is sort of super split up. And you get that sort of double bombardment, as it were. So, at least there's some interest to it. The thing that really struck me is, again, because I do a lot of singing in choirs, and you have to be a lot of harmony singing, a cappella, so you have to be really precise, otherwise it just sounds like muddy as hell. So that precision is kind of drilled into you by our dear choir leader. But the thing that struck me straight away there for listening to this is just how loose the harmonies were. Like the harmony track is just all over the place, timing-wise, with the lead track. And is that, I just want to ask,
but it wouldn't have been a separate track.
Kind of works with the song maybe, but is that a style thing that would go with the song, or should it be actually a bit tighter than that? Because it'd be kind of hard to do that badly.
I think there's a couple of things there. Is it's that sort of blues is not meant to be tight like that. It's meant to be loose stylistically, but also I think it was recorded to a 4-track. I think it was recorded straight. They were probably playing together, and it was recorded straight to.
I mean,
it's none of these different tracks. They were just recording straight.
To be honest, I think that works for it because it's supposed to sound like they're standing in the Mississippi Delta singing this stuff or something. It actually, I think it actually makes the song feel more authentic, if you want to use that word, which of course it's not. This is a bit of a letdown after the sort of jaunty opening track.
Yeah, and it is disjointed as well, isn't it?
Well, they're just building. They had a good start, and then they hit the dirt, and now they're building us up for what comes next. Down on Beggars Farm.
I like this track, and I always have. And it is one that I knew about before I'd even really properly listened to. I'm not sure if they were playing it live or if I heard live renditions of it, but I mean, it's bluesy and it's got some bluesy elements to it, but it's got that sultry, dirty riff is great.
Yeah, and this is like one of the...
I love it.
Almost... they're almost getting there to. They're almost reaching Tulldom with this song. It's a lot more Tully than the others. So I really liked compared to the others.
I mean, it does. Yeah. Are we nominating them now? This is my favourite track on the album.
Yes, I agree.
By a long, long way. I've always loved this.
It's my top
song.
two. It's in my top two, and I probably had a standout favourite from what I remembered, and this one grew on me the most while listening to it, and it's now a clear second favourite. But I still have one other track that's still my favourite. So we'll get into that.
Yeah, it does have those "you done me wrong, woman" tropes in it. It's got that. It's particularly. Can you imagine now? If you ask me nicely, woman.
Oh man, yeah.
Oh man. Come here, darling. Can you please take out the garbage? If you ask me nicely,
that really struck me. There's three of the songs on this album use the word woman. So Beggars Farm, Move On Alone, and It's Breaking Me Up all refer to women, the woman. And it's just like,
and their reputation.
This is, which is going down, especially hanging around this guy. Yeah.
The thing I love, I the more I listen to this song, though, the more I love it. And starting with the lyrics, the reason I love the lyrics is because this song says more about the person who's singing it than the person they're upset about.
Yep.
So it's one of those great songs that doesn't really tell you very much about the person they're upset with, but it tells you a lot about where they're at psychologically. But the thing that elevates it is that it really does do something that most of the other tracks don't, is it fuses not only jazz and blues, but classical elements together, and then really drives there's an emotional kind of arc that sort of aligns with the lyrics really, really well. And I love that sort of the end bit with the sort of the very sort of jazz, where he kind of goes off, but it's almost like emotionally he's just losing his shit because this woman won't do what he wants her to do. And so it manages to fuse these elements, but in a way that makes emotional sense based on the song itself. So that's why
I think is why, without even and that's a great analysis, Robin, but even I would never have recognised any of that on listening to it, but that all of that actually makes it a really listenable song. And one thing that is, I said I'd talk about Glenn Cornick. He is my favourite bass player for Tull, without a question. And there's some coming albums. Well, there's only 2 coming albums that he played on, but there are some coming albums that his bass work is amazing on. And you don't often hear bass solos, but I love a strummed, because I don't have a bass. And I can't play bass. I can't play guitar either. But that
I sound like Nirvana.
Just that. I know it did
Most
not.
like Teen Spirit, right?
That's Nirvana.
Right, okay, sorry, my mistake.
No, it's. And that bass line, that solo is just.
You mean the sorry.
You couldn't tell. You couldn't tell.
It's a sort of insistent bass like in it, which really again it so underpins his state of not him, Ian Anderson, but the person in the song's state of mind. They're so troubled. And attempting to sort of control somebody else. And it really, it's awesome the way that it has that in there, because it's kind of a bit sinister.
Oh, yeah. It's very, very menacing. The music is really sort of got this menacing tone to it.
Yeah. it really is fantastic. Again, though, there's a in the middle of it, there's a guitar instrumental which doesn't fit. Everything else is great. So suddenly there's this guitar instrumental in the middle of it. I'm like, what's that there for? It like doesn't need it. And I understand that's probably, they're all trying to do their bit, but it's just not necessary in this song that suddenly there's this guitar solo in the middle of it. If it had been more of a flute solo, it might have worked a little bit better, but it just, again, felt really out of place in the song itself.
Just from a recording point of view, again, like, as you say, there's the flute stuff in there, and some of it happens simultaneously with him singing, and it just kind of strikes me as odd because we know they love performing, did a lot of performing, but by putting the flute up against the lyrics, the vocals, in when both are so important at that moment, it really puts you in a bit of a problem when you come to perform it, because obviously he can't sing and play the flute at the same time. Well, so it's fine for the recording of the album, but it creates problems further down the track, and they run into this. We'll go into this quite a bit later.
Yeah, they do that. That happens quite frequently.
Yeah, when we saw them live, I was actually quite surprised how little a problem it was. They obviously found ways around it, but it's just sort of an odd choice that they sort of stuck with.
Because when he's saying "You don't fool me, I know what you feel," that's when that sort of classical almost flute is floating over the top, isn't it? And it's very affecting. And unless someone else is playing the flute or using keyboards to create it or something, you would lose that. It's just an example, this song, of where they fuse things together to make something more than just, this is blues, this is jazz. You know what I mean? And I think it's a sign of things to come in the future, and it's by far the best song.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I think.
Yep.
I think so. I think it's pointing the way too.
The other thing I think that's very underrated in this song is his singing. Not just the way he sings it and the style he sings it, and that's fine, but the song is kind of so languorous and almost sort of slow but menacing. And when you're kind of singing in that style, it's very difficult, really hard to keep the energy going and sound like there's energy and interest in your voice, despite it still sounding kind of laid back and languorous and menacing, if you know what I mean. So you're having to constantly put energy in, and he seems to do that really well in this song. Just as from a singer's point of view, I was really impressed with his actual singing here. I thought he did a great job of keeping that energy going.
But another woman done me wrong, and I think that, again, it was Mick Abrams who wrote this one.
When I first heard of this song, Beggars Farm, I thought, well, this is, classic Tull. It's got beggars in it. It's got farming. It's all through their wheelhouse. And I listened to it and thought, it's nothing to do with beggars, nothing to do with farming at all. What the hell? Robin, explain this. So I think you've done a good job of that. My mind is now clear.
Great analysis, Robin. 6-year-old verdict. So I think she got a whiff of the fact that I had higher expectations for this track. So
no leading the witness, Your Honour.
She did say it's not as bad as the first two.
Wow.
And then after a short, I know, just glowing praise, but then after a short while, she said, "Dad, I've got 2 questions." And I thought, she's into it. She's actually engaged.
She's become a Tullite.
Yep. 1, why is it so boring? And 2, why won't it end?
Well, that's the guitar solo in the middle. You can blame that on.
Oh, fantastic!
So big tick for Beggars Farm.
Yeah. Oh, great song.
Well, I'm glad you two liked it, because it is my
all-time favourite.
Not all-time favourite.
But I think it's, like I said, it's one of those few examples where they got the fusion actually worked.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'll say, you can really see almost like it's halfway to being Jethro Tull as we know it in the next album, pretty much. So it's on the way here.
Yep. So Move On Alone.
Move On Alone. I always thought this was Move On Along, but having actually heard it now,
might as well. Well, we may be doing that very quickly. This is pretty much Mick Abrams' signature.
Well, this is the only song without Ian Anderson singing the solo line in whole Jethro Tull back
But it's not
catalogue,
hardcore blues either, which is very strange. In fact, I'll be honest, I didn't realise it wasn't Ian Anderson until last week. I always thought it was Ian Anderson singing. But for a purist blues guy, this feels like a very strange choice.
Yeah. It's the horn. So do you know who did the horn arrangement in this? I was very surprised.
Yes.
To hear this early.
Yeah. It was
David then.
Yeah.
Can we call...
Yeah.
If it was David at the time, we can call David at the time, did it. So I didn't realise he was in the picture that early in the piece. But those horns have a real New Orleans jazz...
Yeah, it's very jazz. It's very jazzy, isn't it?
Street jazz feel to them, but that really, that southern... Yeah, there's a real feel to it.
David Palmer. Yeah.
And to me, this is it's just so anodyne. It literally is the most easy listening, unobjectionable piece of music that Jethro Tull ever put their name to. In my opinion, it's fine. I can't say anything else about it. I quite enjoy listening to it. I don't want to listen to it again, but it's totally fine. But so boring. It just to me, it is the epitome of the word anodyne.
Yeah.
I'm not fond of it. It's grouped in with there are maybe 3 tracks on this album which just merge into one for me. So they just feel derivative and non. There's nothing special about them, and I don't mean to be cruel, but I just don't feel inspired by this track at all.
Yeah, that's exactly
it's jazzy, and it's kind of straying into Baroque pop territory, but there are people in this era who are doing Baroque pop at another level, like Scott Walker. So this just is just. I mean, it's awful, and it's another Love Gone Wrong kind of thing.
Yeah, well, woman does get mentioned again.
Yeah. He's crying, and it's like,
well, at least he's man enough to cry, so that's something.
Yeah. But it also feels kind of swinging 60s. It's got that kind of Herb Alpert kind of thing about it. But it's very strange that Mick Abrams is sort of singing this. I really, I don't know.
Well, and again, it's just like his voice. Again, it's pretty anodyne. It's just like there's nothing, unless we've only got this one track to sort of base it on, but it's perfectly competent. It's perfectly okay, but it's not exciting. He doesn't deliver with any sort of particular, verve or whatever. And he seems to have a weird American accent while he's singing, which is very odd, especially in this song. It's very sort of, American accented, which just seemed weird to me.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it doesn't really fit at all on this album in some ways, because it's not even what you would call, there's some sort of more straightforward, jazz arrangements. This isn't really that. It's almost pop kind of, like I said, Baroque pop.
Yeah, it's like a good version of Aeroplane or Sunshine Day.
So it is very forgettable. I think you said Brent is forgettable. Adrian said it's anodyne. You're right, it is.
The one thing that is in its favour is that it's not Aeroplane, because if there was a choice between this and Aeroplane going on the album.
And 16-year-olds should note that it's not that long either.
Well, she'd given up by then. No rating.
The other thing
for this
about
one
it is
all.
he's talking about how he's completely, tired of crying, but it's so sort of, toe tappy and upbeat. I mean, it's sort of everything that's right about Beggars Farm is wrong about this track. It just emotionally just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It's
it is kind of like, oh, woe is me. I guess I should drag myself to the floor and move on along. But in the meantime, he's like already whistling and kind of wandering down the street, swinging his keys. Right. Yeah, it just is, as you said, there's this real disconnect.
Yeah. Anyway.
So moving on.
Move on along.
Guess I'll move on along. Serenade to a Cuckoo.
This is one I did a bit of research for. So the fellow who wrote this track or performed it was Roland Kirk. Mm-hmm. Do you know him?
I know of him. Yeah.
Yeah, blind jazz flautist.
But multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah, multi. So, yeah, he did play two. There's pictures of him playing two saxophones at once.
Well, disturbingly, I actually went to see a YouTube video of him performing Serenade to a Cuckoo, and the first instrument he plays is a nose flute. Now that is a wrong instrument.
It's no claghorn, that's for sure.
No. Well, it is after you've used it. Don't Jazz 101. Don't use the flute after Roland's using it.
Well, I think the thing that Roland Kirk was just a genius in terms of his ability to play multiple instruments, and even on that track, I mean, he plays it fast, right? And he's playing the nose flute, then he's playing the flute, and he plays it at quite a pace. I was just like quite shocked how slow Ian Anderson's version is compared to
again, he was just learning the flute. So
this is the track. I believe this is the track he learned to play the flute on, and it was his inspiration for thinking that it could be incorporated into rock music and compete as a lead instrument. So, that was due. And if you listen to Roland Kirk, particularly playing this, Ian Anderson's style is clearly directly borrowed. He says it suited him because he could vocalize and breathe into the flute, because he wasn't good enough to get a proper what's the term,
embouchure or whatever it's called.
Embouchure? He couldn't do that yet. So when he couldn't get pure notes, he had this example to follow where he could vocalize or
it's like the cheating version of playing
grunt
the flute
and breathe into the flute. So the kazoo flute. So but it was very interesting to see how directly attributable to his style was to Roland Kirk. I'd heard that it was, but and this is the
tribute.
This is the tribute. I would also say it feels like a practice run for an instrumental to come, which is a brilliant instrumental, and this just feels like the practice run for it.
Yeah, I actually I have to say I was a bit shocked just how much he copied his style. Because I'd always thought of Ian Anderson as a sort of singularly unique figure.
In rock.
And I mean that's because of my ignorance around jazz, I suppose. But I didn't. I mean, one of the things about is that again, it feels Serenade to a Cuckoo is again just it's a direct copy down to the play style. It really is. It's not even trying to take it. In fact, it's just a slower version in a way. And so he's not even trying to play it sort of more purely, or he's not even trying to change it. He's just trying to essentially copy Kirk's style.
Well, he's probably not. I suspect he's not able to. I mean, if we understand properly, he picked up the flute a month before the recording this album. It's pretty astounding that he could even copy
to this extent
a style of an established.
But he's never going to compare well to like someone whose literal bread and butter is professional flute playing. So.
No, but he took it and did something with it, and an attitude, and put it in a context that was different. And nobody, even the best musicians don't spring out of nowhere.
No,
they all have they all have influences, and they attribute
and they all have a learning curve. No one picks up the flute and is like Roland Kirk overnight.
What I did, I would never, and maybe it's because it's at a slower pace and it's not as proficient, but what I did get from listening to the Roland Kirk version is that it actually, what's the term where you make a noise that mimics an animal's mimesis? Is that it?
It's like pareidolia for sound.
Mimesis. I think that's the term. That's where you use your voice or an instrument to mimic an animal's thing. So that do is cuckoo, cuckoo, and Roland Kirk, when you see him playing, is singing cuckoo into the flute. And I didn't get that from Ian Anderson playing it. So it could have been Serenade to
and Marmoset
or to Bloodwind Pig.
Yes, and it's a very standard sort of jazz round, where you start, have a bit of improv, the guitar does a bit, then back to it's that classic kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the thing is that if I want to listen to some really good flute playing or whatever, I'll find the best people and find songs of theirs I like and listen to those. I once saw a CD by Michael Flatley Plays the Flute, and it's like, dance sensation, Michael Flatley plays the flute. And I'm like, well, sure. I mean, he's a great dancer. Like, he's like, one of the world's top dancers. But is he one of the world's top flautists? No, he's probably he's better than I'll ever be as a flautist. And he's probably like in the top 10% of flute players. But do I really want a CD of him playing stuff? No.
So I did know that this would earn grudging interest from my wife. So this is
Serenade
the only track she could bother to comment on.
She likes cuckoos?
Because she loves jazz.
Ah. Yeah.
And she hadn't heard Roland Kirk, so she has since gone and found it. And as we have all just determined that the Jethro Tull version's not a patch on the Roland Kirk version, but it has led her to a new artist for her that she hadn't heard. So there you go.
After 6 minutes of Serenade to a Cuckoo, we go to Dharma for one. Every time I hear Dharma for one, I can't help but think she really gets turned on by the television and vice versa, because of living in the past. I know we're not talking about living, but I so intimately just connect this song with living in the past, the live version. And someone's trying to send them hash up through the audience or something. He goes, "Oh, hold on, I think we better put this away in case it contains contraband."
So Dharma for one. Now, you guys were alive at this time. So for the youth of today, I just would like to ask you both, what on earth is going on here? Had the drum kit just been invented? I mean, what the hell is happening?
The first minute of this is one of my favourite parts of this album.
It's all downhill from there.
No, it really, it just kicks straight in. It's the fastest paced thing, and it's got this sort of almost reckless momentum to it that I just love. And my favourite, Mick Abraham's riff on this is my favourite. That just this chopping, fast-tempoed riff is great, and the sort of skirling flute. That first minute, I love the way. I think in later performances they got John Evans to introduce a locomotive breath type organ or piano introduction to it. But that's just not it. I love the way it just kicks in, and I just love that first minute of it. It's just the tempo of it, the sort of the reckless sort of momentum of it. I really,
And what about the next 4 minutes?
Well, it's a product of its time. So this was an age of virtuosos in rock, and particularly in guitar. And this is one thing I don't appreciate about some of the rock of this period is the elevation of that virtuosity to ridiculous performance levels. So I really good instrumentalists sort of subvert the instrument for the sake of the song. But it was just part of this. You had to have a gratuitous guitar solo, and you had to have a drum solo to go with it, and it just makes no sense. I've seen an interview with Clive Bunker and interviews about other people with him, and it is clear that he was universally loved, and he's a very unassuming man who thought he had no talent at all. and whatever you say about this drum solo, as a drum solo, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm thinking, like, to me, this is the sort of song that live would be fantastic. So energizing, so much fun, and in the live crucible, if you like, you can really play off the energy of the drummer. He can play off your energy, and you can have a really good time with it together as an audience and a performer. But on this album, it just really doesn't work
it's
at all
for live.
for me.
It's for a live set, and you can imagine, all the other members of the band could all fuck off the stage and have a drink while the drummer gets left to do, his 3-minute bit, and then they'll come back on again. That kind. I have to say about Clive Bunker, though, every time I see him in a video, I think, gee, that guy needs a chiropractor. He's got the worst freaking posture of any drummer I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh, does he?
Oh,
my goodness. It's like, Jesus. It's like, straight up.
That's what Dharma for one did to him.
Yes.
Actually, it's an interesting title for it as well. I think they just chose it because it wasn't Karma. It was Dharma.
Dharma, man.
But it's exactly the opposite of Dharma. It's all over the shop in a good way. I particularly the first bit.
But without the visuals of seeing him, what he's doing with the drums and whatever, it just comes across as noise. And the actual recording quality of it is just absolutely dire. Like the amount of detail from the drum hits and whatever that you're losing is just incredible. Go back and listen to it again. It's just so harsh and one-dimensional. It's kind of sad. I really from a sound engineering point of view, don't like it at all. And drums are notoriously difficult, but I mean, these guys are professional.
They weren't quite yet, though.
Yeah, I'm talking about the sound engineering guys, though. So
I don't think they had. I think it was.
And again, if it's in this weird, large, boomy space, maybe that caused problems as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just to me, it's just lots of problems.
I can't listen to it though without hearing the lyrics that were. Which were added later.
And you will find what is in your mind.
I prefer it. Actually, my preferred version is this one. And I can listen to the first minute of it, and then I can
press stop.
And I think there are slightly, I think, with some of the, and I think later they lean into it a bit more. I know Ian Anderson became increasingly interested in South Asian and Asian sounds and music, and I feel like they're trying to reach for something a bit more progressive, and it doesn't kind of get there.
Quite get there? No. But I think it's I still think the beginning of it's one of the highlights of the album, which might not say much about
I'm going to wait for the Brent cut to come out, the 1 minute Brent cut. I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I won't be doing a drum solo. That's not going to happen. What is interesting on that Tunnel of Love thing I've got as well, so that Martin Barr must have just joined the band, and they reference him, so he's there at the gig, but they play Dharma for one and there's no guitar. So the whole melody line is the bass. Okay. Again, and Clive Bunker doing a very... not Clive Bunker, Glenn Cornick doing a very good job of it. And it's a good version of it.
Is he using high neck
guitar in it?
bass at the high neck, is he? A la New Order kind of thing.
No, I don't know. I think he's my favourite bass player of any of the Jethro Tull, and particularly for the next two albums. I just love what he's did on those. But I actually, though, that 2001 reunion thing, I saw him playing. He was playing a fretless electric bass, which must be a very difficult,
very
thing to
80s.
do. And I looked back, and he wasn't playing a fretless bass in the back in the late 60s, but that must be very so respect.
Yeah, I guess 40 years of practice, you can become pretty good.
And I think that's what he did. I think he was a professional bass player his entire life.
Plus, he looked like a real hippie, not like the others. He really did look like a
real street cred.
The kind of the hippie clothing and everything, which I love. I think that's awesome. The headband and everything. Yeah, he really looked like a flower child. I think I saw some footage of when they're running on stage, and of course Ian Anderson's very theatrical. But he's more, he really engages with the audience and seemed like a really nice guy.
We might talk about it later, about when he leaves the band.
Speaking of breaking up, it's breaking me up. Oh, not another one. Please, not another blues pastiche.
No, I've written competent and forgettable.
No, if it was forgettable, that would be good. The vocal style on this, I absolutely hate. It's awful. It's just sounds so unnatural, him singing it. And unlike Beggars Farm, he's just in his element. He's in the groove. He knows exactly what he wants to do with the singing, and he pulls it off. This is just, yeah. Even though it's got singing, I'd rather listen to Dharma for One or Serenade, probably. So that's
but to be fair, thematically so different. Love Gone Wrong. I mean, we're really kind of stretching the themes here, aren't we? Not.
So again, this just blurs with. I can't even remember their names now. With Someday the Sun Won't Shine for Me and Move On Alone. I can't, and I couldn't, without actually listening to it and seeing where the track listing was, I could not remember which was which.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's just another blues pastiche, really. There's nothing really much more to say about it, even though it's 5 minutes long.
I'm not an expert on like what's blues and what's jazz, whatever. But just listening to this, I thought, wow, that's really bluesy. So if I can recognize it as bluesy, it's pretty bluesy.
Yeah. Mick Abrams is singing on it again, isn't he? But I couldn't hear lyrics. I think he's just singing ba 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 ba.
Yeah, and there's a bit of heavy breathing in it too. Some heavy breathing in it as well at some stage. And if I wanted to listen to blues, 12-bar blues, 8-bar blues, I'd listen to the real stuff. It's like,
I didn't know Rush did this kind of thing.
Funny. We're going to bring up Rush in every... Scott Walker and Rush are going to come up in every episode for me.
Oh, yes. Did we mention... Oh, no, it's too late to mention Claghorns again.
There was a Claghorn in...
Was the Claghorn in Dharma for one?
Yeah.
In Dharma, yeah.
So
that's the patented sort of... It's got a toy...
Non-patented.
It's got a toy...
A recorder with a saxophone mouthpiece and a bell of a toy trumpet or something.
Right. That's that thing that sounds like...
You can hear it very clearly. If you go to the end of Dharma for one, you can hear it very clearly playing. Then.
Sound, yeah.
Yeah, like a vuvuzela, but with less class.
So, Cat Squirrel.
Apparently, is this the song that they put on there because people like it, in quotes? I think it is.
I think it is.
Yep.
And maybe it must have been a live favourite, and it really is the showpiece for Mick Abrams.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Guitar, isn't it?
Absolutely.
There's a crazy 12 or 15 minute version on that later album that he did.
It's in my notes here. Mick gets to show his chops, I wrote.
Okay. What is it? So, before we get into Mick's chops, Cat Squirrel.
What is it?
Is it a real animal?
Okay, I'm Googling it as we speak.
I mean, it sounds like some stupid D&D animal, not a very ferocious one. Like an owlbear or something.
They were used to make judges' wigs from in the 19th century, but they sadly went extinct. Yeah,
because they were hunted.
What?
Yeah, hunted to extinction by judges
for judges' wigs.
Cat squirrels.
They had to kill them, I presume, before they became judges' wigs.
They put them on their heads and then cover them in powder, and that would kill them.
Yes.
Is this? Is it? Are you bullshitting me? Is that what it was?
No, there's no such thing as a cat squirrel. I'm fairly confident.
No, a reddish-coated fox squirrel found in eastern parts of its range. Common European squirrel. It's just a regular squirrel.
Now I don't know what to think. Because when I was watching the YouTube clips of this song, it kept showing lots of pictures of cats and squirrels. So, I'm just totally confused now. And where the judge, why you guys brought up the judges, I have no idea.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
So, and apparently this is a in jazz there are standards. There's so
Yeah,
many.
and
My
this
Funny
is,
Valentine. Whatever you name it. But but this is a blues rock standard. Apparently, everyone was playing it. Apparently, Cream played it, and so it's apparently like it's just a standard thing
because people like it.
Yes, that's why it has to be on your album.
Do we like it?
Yeah.
It's all right.
The instrumental
all right.
things, it's fine.
I mean, it's if you like that guitar-driven kind of bluesy rock stuff, I think it's it's pretty good.
It's not the low point of the album by any means.
No.
I like it. Yeah. It's one of the things I would listen to.
Yeah.
Again, it just sort of makes me think. Didn't they have something of their own, something new they could put on there? But maybe this is like the fig leaf for Mick Abrams, or not fig leaf, olive branch. That's the word. The olive branch for Mick Abrams to look. You get to play this if you'll go with us on all these other songs. I don't know.
I mean, he's pretty impressive on it. I have to say that.
I
think
know.
it's a real
He's a great
showcase.
guitarist. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of people. And I'm not a judge of guitar players, but on the internet, people seem to be pretty high on his guitar playing in many cases. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, if Serenade to a Cuckoo is sort of Ian Anderson's sort of signature piece, I think Cat Squirrel is better because it's less derivative. Because it's more of a blues.
It's more competent.
Yes, it's more competent. It's a blues rock. It's moving into rock rather than just sort of pure blues. And it's you can see this guy really knows what he's doing.
That's right. I mean, you're talking about a very good guitarist, possibly at the height of their powers, versus a guy who's just picked up the flute and is starting to learn it. So, I think it's a pretty unfair comparison.
Doesn't even know which orifice to stick it in yet.
That's right.
I have to admit, I haven't watched other guitarists of the era playing this particular. It's almost like it's a sort of a rite of passage at this time. I don't know. I don't know enough about bands at this time, but it feels like if you're a Jeff Beck or if you're a Mick Abrams or you're I'm trying to think of a blues-based guitar, Eric Clapton, you need to be competent playing this. This is like this is a rite of passage.
Piece.
This is your rite of passage into that kind of rock space. Whereas Black Sabbath came along and said, "Fuck that shit." Where you can play 3 chords and you don't need to be competent because it's all about atmosphere and sort of, you know what I mean? So bands like Black Sabbath sort of blew that kind of out of the water in a sense, because they showed it's almost a punk aesthetic in a sense. You don't need to, be some great blues rock player to kind of really deliver. So yeah, Cat Squirrel. There we go. So what's we've got here? Good old Song for Jeffrey, isn't it?
This is a bit weird because I associate this song with another album.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't hear it. And as I say, it dropped off my playlist, so it's not even in this album in my playlist.
You accidentally deleted all copies.
That's right. So placing it within this album, it just feels a bit... It doesn't. It feels like it should be at the beginning of it, not at the end. I don't think of it as a song for this album, but it was. And
this was a song for this album.
And it was a standard of their live set for a long time. So, would it be the best known track from this album? Was it the single?
Well, it was in the movie.
It was
Rolling
the single,
Stones
wasn't it?
movie. So
it was. I think it might have been the single from this album.
Yes, it was.
There's quite a few live performances of it, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I really like it. This is my favourite track on the album, and maybe eventually Beggars Farm would replace it. But the thing that immediately grabbed me, of course, is the weird vocal style, almost incomprehensible style.
Well,
I'm not sure
what
what's
is that?
going on there, but I read a theory that the reason for this was that because he's playing the harmonica at the same time, and so he was using a harmonica mic to get the best out of the harmonica, but when he then sung straight into the harmonica mic, it was kind of like
a different mic.
It didn't, apparently. It didn't treat his vocals too well. I'm not so sure about that. So I thought, okay, well, that could be true. So I did a bit of digging. So I went and looked at some of their videos, their live performances. And the first one I found was the one for French TV, where it literally uses just it starts off and there's like a bunch of people all sitting around grooving out of time to Song for Jeffrey. And I thought, oh, that's odd. And there's no harmonica. No one's playing the harmonica on stage. What's going on? And then I noticed that like the bass and the lead guitar isn't plugged in. There's no speakers on stage. The mic is not plugged in. There's no wires. There's no wires anywhere. And it is literally the recording off this was played with them just miming along to it.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just bizarre, the bizarre thing. So the people in the audience, I don't actually even know, like Clive Bunker looks like he's hitting the drums.
Yeah.
And Ian Anderson, it would be very hard probably for him not to actually sing along with his miming, I would imagine. I would find it really hard. So it might have just been like this room of silent people with a bit of drum playing and Ian Anderson kind of belting out the lyrics from it. That would have been pretty surreal. That was bizarre. That would have been bizarre.
I just had this vision of them all playing silently, and actually the music in the background is da 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 da, and everyone's grooving to that one.
Possibly.
But
so they were literally miming to it and miming very badly to it, possibly because they hadn't done much Milli Vanilli-ing along before. So I tried to find another one where they were doing it instead, and I came across the Rock and Roll Circus version. And on that, Cornick has like the harmonica kind of strapped to his chest as he's playing the guitar and is pretending to play that. And in this case, it's not the studio recording version. It's a studio recording of all the instruments, and only the Ian Anderson's bits, I think, are actually done live. So he does a much better job of pretending to sing along, because he actually sings along. And the lyrics in that, you can actually hear him much, much more clearly than you can in the studio recording version. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Like, was it a deliberate choice?
I've always thought it was, and I've always wondered why, because I've preferred live recordings where I can actually hear
what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, for a long time, which changes the whole tone of that, because it's a really escapist. I haven't listened to the whole song, but there's a real escapist feeling about the beginning of the song. But I always thought he said, I'm going to get away in my car.
I could give away my car,
Give away my car, which is a bit different.
Yeah, it's really... the lyrics... These are the first lyrics that actually made me think of the whole album. It's like, okay, this is actually quite interesting, because the guy's saying, he's going to go away tomorrow, he's going to give away his car, and he wants to take his woman along with him, but he knows that she won't go so far, she won't go along with it. She wants to like stay and live the normal life. And then the whole, I've ceased to see where I'm going, don't want to. It's just a really alien mindset for me, and it just really kind of makes you think, wow, suddenly I'm having to think, and like, who is this guy and why is he saying these things? So yeah, I think it's really good lyrically, really interesting. The weird sound effect on his voice just pulled me in. I really love it.
I'm sure I've seen a live version with Ian Anderson playing the harmonica.
Yeah,
which begs
probably
the
is.
question: if he is,
yeah.
how does he? Would he have been able to switch live between the harmonica and the flute, because they're right on top of each other?
Yeah, well, that's what he said on the Rock and Roll Circus one, because he couldn't swap between them, so they had to have this fake setup for Glenn Cornick pretending to play it instead, which just looks bizarre. It just looks ridiculous, and he's doing his best trying to pretend like he's playing it, but it doesn't really look like he is. Whereas Ian Anderson's performance is like, okay, yeah, that's credible. Whereas in the French TV one, not credible. He's like totally out of time and weird. So,
yeah, it is. It is a very strange, enigmatic song, and it's got a very unusual place for me, because the first album I listened to was Living in the Past, and the very, very first song of Jethro Tull's I ever heard was Song for Jeffrey. And it's not the best song to kind of get into Jethro Tull with, because it is very opaque. It's got this very muddy, it's not just the voice, the whole production is very muddy. and in a way, if it wasn't for the fact that Brent had introduced me to REM and I was sort of used to hearing people sing and not care about what they were singing about, I think I would have stopped listening to Jethro Tull then and there, because it's such a... I just don't...
And we wouldn't be having this podcast.
We wouldn't be having this podcast. And so the thing is, it was a real challenge sonically to listen to this song as the first song from Jethro Tull, because it is a very opaque, enigmatic song. But the thing that I've come to appreciate is that this muddy lo-fi production of it reflects the sort of anti-establishment lyrics. This is very anti-establishment. This is saying fuck you to the man. Jeffrey, his friend, doesn't give a fuck about the mainstream, and the song doesn't give a fuck about being nice and crisp and clean. It's almost deliberately muddy and things, and I think that works really well. I really like Song for Jeffrey because it has this almost gleeful, which to me is very Jethro Tull, almost this gleeful, dirty, muddy kind of treatment to it, with lyrics which are kind of quite they're what's the word? The lyrics are not very concerned with, they're sort of amoral, apolitical. It's just about me.
Thought-provoking is how I find them.
Yeah, I see them.
As I say, it's a bit the thought process is a bit alien to me, so I have to kind of think what's going on here.
Yeah, but and in a way though, I think Jeffrey doesn't give a shit about what other people think anyway. He's just, but he's definitely not mainstream, and he's not going to work for the man. And that really comes through, and I think Ian Anderson admires that about his friend.
I think Jeffrey Hammond later pointed out that it was a song written for Jeffrey, not about Jeffrey.
Interesting. Okay. Maybe Jeffrey's not like that at all then. But it's the kind of song that, at the time, if you listen to Jethro Tull, would be the least accessible for your parents to like. It doesn't work to try to bring you in any way. It's very, you have to work at it to
but that's exactly what brought me into it, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because it was like that very, like, you're sort of looking at the picture and it's like, that's not really in focus, what's going on? You kind of, have to sort of work your way around or squint a bit maybe, and then finally come to focus. You think, holy shit, okay, right, that's what that was about.
Yeah.
Oh, there's bloody 3D pictures in the 80s.
And part of that musically is the slide guitar in there as well, which I don't think he really used. That it gives it that sort of very muddy, as you've said, sound.
Yeah,
and I don't think he uses it
No.
elsewhere in any of the other
No.
tracks on this album.
And I remember listening to this song and staring at the cover of Living in the Past, which is brown and muddy and sort of looks like it's from the 18th century, but it's not. And I thought, what the hell is all this? What have I gotten myself into? This is all very strange. And of course, Jethro Tull are not just Song for Jeffrey, but it's strange because the elements of it are very Jethro Tull, but then other aspects of it aren't. And the other thing that shocked me, and we'll talk about Jeffrey Goes to Leicester Square, because that shocked me as well, because that wasn't like this at all. So it's a
Who
really
is this Jeffrey?
Yeah. I think there's elements of, it makes it very Tull-like. It's this sort of enigmatic. It doesn't sort of buy into the flower power hippiedom of the time, but it's anti-establishment, and it's clearly it's just a strange song.
I mean, it's not a comfortable song, but it does have something. They released it as a first single.
Yeah.
It was popular, and they continued to be a popular song in their set. So there's something about it that that is more than just uncomfortable. It's obviously challenging, so that's that's attractive, but it's just got a drive to it as well that's very compelling, I think.
Yeah. I think it's, again, a bit like Beggars Farm. It obviously there's blues in there, there's slide guitar in there, there's obviously, these elements, the jazzy elements, but it fuses them into something new. And so this song and Beggars Farm are the two tracks that managed to do that successfully, rather than being either unsuccessful or sort of purely one thing or another.
Yeah.
So, and I think, and for me, it's kind of fitting that this is at the end of this album, because it's kind of the beginning of Jethro Tull is this song in a way. And it's kind of fitting that it's at the end of I know Round is there, but you know what I mean? This is at the end of the album, sort of signposting, all right, this was Jethro Tull. We're now going to move forward with something else.
Yeah.
Well, one thing...
Sorry.
Go on.
It seems like he was already there from his own commentary. I think they knocked off this out. Did you say 3 months? I thought... Feeling it was actually quite quick.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so they took longer than, but already they were moving on.
Yep.
And probably even by the time it was released, Mick Abrams was moving on alone.
Yeah.
The other advantage of it being so muddy vocally is that it's given rise to quite a few mondegreens as to what he was actually singing. So, do you guys know what these things? Shall I go through some of the mondegreens?
Yes.
You can pick which one you
I
think?
do not even know what the term mondegreen means.
Oh, mondegreen is when you hear lyrics and you enthusiastically sing along with them, and then 10 years later you realise that the Hendrix song was "Excuse me." It was not "Excuse me while I kiss this guy." It's "Excuse me while I kiss the sky."
One of my favourites in mondegreens is "Don't go out tonight. It's bound to change your life. There's a bathroom on the right."
A bathroom on the right.
Ain't nothing gonna break my spine. That was one of my favourites. So yeah, all right. So these are thoroughly researched online. What people thought it was. I've ceased to see where I'm going.
I thought.
Hold on. I thought it was. Hold on. I thought that's what it was.
So did I.
Hold on. What is
it? So you both vote for "Cease to See Where I'm Going"?
Yes.
That's what you thought?
Yeah.
Okay. Other things that people have thought was "She's the sea where I'm going."
Right.
"I seem to see where I'm going."
Okay.
And "Don't see where I'm going."
Okay.
What is it actually?
Well, I always thought it was "Cease to See Where I'm Going."
So yes.
And my Jethro Tull songbook, which is kind of official, but Ian Anderson's name not on it anywhere, but obviously they got permission to publish it.
Yeah.
That does say "Cease to See Where I'm Going."
Hey,
but
we win.
But
okay,
I have it on good authority that in the there's like a Jethro Tull official songbooks lyric book, and in that it's "Don't see where I'm going." And if you actually listen closely to some of the versions of the clearer, he does sing "Don't see where I'm going." There's a new book coming out by Ian Anderson called Silent Singing, which has all the lyrics of all the albums, all the songs. That's coming out this year, so should clear up the mystery once and for all.
Well, Google says "Don't see where I'm going." Don't see where I'm going.
Yeah, I think that is now the official. And even though I say on my songbook says "Cease to See," I think CCC is the official one.
That's disappointing because I think "Don't Cease to See Where I'm Going"
is better.
Yes.
Yep. And singing wise, also he does this weird little sort of hiccup almost between the C's, almost like he's slightly drunk. It's really weird. I don't know how he does it because I can't. Even though I'm a singer, I can't recreate it.
Without being drunk.
It's like, where I'm going. I can't do
it.
But he just has the tiniest little sort of hick at the end of each C. It's quite interesting.
I thought when I heard this song at first, I thought he was trying to sound like he was 80 years old or something.
Well, he's doing a good job, so yeah, because he does sound like he's 80 years old.
Like he's got, to see where I'm going. Like I thought he was deliberately
he does. Yeah, so he does that, but it's very subtle, so it's quite well done.
The other thing is, I'm just saying, don't see what I do not want to see. Don't hear what I don't say. I'm sure it was, don't see what I don't want to see. Don't hear what I don't think.
That's what I thought too. That's what I thought too. Yep.
Yeah, that sounds right. Let's see what the official songbook, non-official songbook says.
That's not right. That's not what he says. I'm sure he doesn't say, don't hear what I don't say. I'm sure he doesn't.
Don't see what I do not want to see. I don't hear what I don't say.
Oh, okay.
Don't be what I don't want to be. I continue in my way.
Oh, I always thought it was, and it was easy with the drink. I always thought it was, you don't hear what I don't think, won't be what I don't want to be, and it's easy with the drink. That's what I thought it was saying.
There's more Mondegreens than.
I thought, he's like on the source,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's kind of in the same. It's in the right ballpark. So I guess there's just round, isn't there?
Yeah, which is not much. It's just feels like a little piece of loungy, I don't know what.
Jazz, it's just jazz lounge. Yeah, it's like it feels like they had it there and they just thought they'd just stick it on the end. Kind of thing.
They needed,
it's like, we've got 1 minute 35 seconds at the end of the tape.
We need 5 tracks on each side of the album, and this will round it out.
Yeah, so to speak.
I mean, there's not much to say about it, is there? So.
No.
No.
All right.
Yeah, there we are. So,
I think we all agreed at the beginning that it wasn't a coherent album, but some of us might be a bit more generous with it than others. So, your overall opinions as a whole.
Who wants to kick off and give us their?
Yeah, I can kick off.
You got to give us your Jeffries at the end. How many out of 5 and all that?
To me, it's there. There's no structure or sort of plan or flow behind it all. It's just like here are the songs we've got. We'll chuck them down. To me, especially some of the instrumental things and the more it's other people's songs they've put on there, I would really have liked to have seen some of their own stuff. But then, if we look at the other songs they've got at the time, maybe there's Airplane, The Sunshine Day. Would they have fitted on the album? No, they fitted even less well than the stuff they put on there already, surprisingly.
They were moving in it. They still were moving in some sort of direction away from what they'd...
Yeah.
God knows what was happening with those.
Yeah, but there isn't even... like the album isn't even laid out as a plan of, okay, here is our progression away from where we were to where we're going, which they could have done, I think, fairly successfully.
Yeah.
And that would have given some sort of theme or structure, but maybe the album would have kind of been unwieldy and unweighted, like a pyramid sitting on its point then. So, yeah, for me, it doesn't work super well. There's a couple of songs in there I like. Song for Jeffrey, Beggars Farm, the more tully ones. But apart from those two, I'm not going to be sort of going back and listening to any of the others. Those two will probably get harvested out and listened to with, other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel a lot more forgiving of this album, I think. I can see what they were doing. They were trying to find a way forward and to learn their instruments at the same time. I think they were very young, and I think it's remarkable that there is actually some good pieces on it. I just, same as you guys, I rate Beggars Farm and Song for Jeffrey very highly, and the first minute of Dharma, for one, are very, are real high points. And it feels to me like it's a bunch of dedicated musicians who are still learning their craft and wrestling to find their way through, and occasionally finding it. And there's a real, I keep using this word, but there's a real energy about it. Yeah. So I actually feel quite positive about this album, and I quite like it. It's not far from being my favourite Jethro Tull album, and I can't see that this incarnation of Jethro Tull could have prospered, but I do think it's a very worthwhile album for what it is.
Yeah.
Despite its... I think looking at it in the context of where they were and what was to come, I actually think it's a very interesting album, and I can feel the creative tensions in it and just see what was going to be formed out of this just starting to emerge. And I think it's fascinating, and I think there's some really good moments in it. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I think I'm in agreement there with you, Adrian, and you, Brent. As a debut album, I think it's a pretty good effort from young men who are learning their craft and developing their skills. I think like you just said, Brent, and I think you've both talked about this. The band was really being pulled in two directions. You've got the purist blues, and you've got in Mick Abrams, and then you've got the more jazzy Ian Anderson, who's looking to stretch his wings and sort of progress and is much more interested in other things. So, and that's very much reflective of the album. And the problem is with the album, and the thing I really don't like about it is that for most of the songs, they are either kind of okay jazz pieces or very derivative blues pieces. And I understand that's where they're starting from, but it means that a lot of those tracks are just, they're fine, they're competently played.
But they're disposable.
They're disposable. Where that doesn't happen is, as I think you both said, Beggars Farm and Song for Jeffrey.
Sunday Feeling gets I think just gets in there as well for me.
You're right. I think the thing for me with the song, the Sunday Feeling piece is the middle just messes it up because it just goes all over the place. And I think for me, whilst Song for Jeffrey is fine, I think Beggars Farm is a really fine track. I've really come to really appreciate that track. And I don't know what magic or serendipity happened
even now.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think
even though it has nothing to do with beggars or farms.
Yes, that's right. And I think for me it has the problem with these guys is that from an emotional perspective, they are not. And Ian Anderson gets better at this, but at the moment they're not very good at expressing their emotions, and that's not surprising given their age and their experience. But Beggars Farm manages to.
There's a maturity to it.
There's a maturity and an emotionality which combines with the music in a way that makes it much more sophisticated. Than the other tracks in that sense. And so I've come to appreciate that track surprisingly more than any of the others. So good start, very derivative, and I'm glad they moved away from that.
Yes.
But it's interesting looking at what people said on Facebook about this was, because I got a lot of responses when I asked people about it.
Please let us know.
I got more than 100 responses, and it's interesting because people fall into two camps. They either say this isn't a real Jethro Tull album. The first Jethro Tull album, as far as I'm concerned, is Stand Up.
Stand Up, yep.
And then there are those who are like, no. If you've never heard This Was, and somebody put it on and you knew the rest of Jethro Tull, you would say, this is Jethro Tull. So some people believe that there's enough unique elements in This Was to say it is a Jethro Tull album, but others don't believe it is and believe it really starts with Stand Up.
Well, I think, I think there's a huge leap between these two albums in terms of vision and direction and quality. But I think we've all agreed there are some tracks on this album, not a lot that are just very forgettable, but there are some tracks on this album which are the goods and are Tull.
Yes.
Do we do it? Do we do our ratings?
Let's go ahead. Go on. Let's.
So you're first, Adrian.
1 Jeffrey out of 5.
I struggle with what to do because I don't think it deserves a low rating for the reasons I've given, but I also can't rate it anywhere near some of the. I'm giving it a 3.
Right.
Three Jeffries for me.
Okay. That's interesting because for me, because there are 2 tracks that stand out, that's 2 Jeffries out of 5 for me for those 2 tracks. Okay. I mean, I'm not always going to do it that way, but I thought one is, for me, it's those 2 tracks elevated above 1. 3, I can't go there, but I think it's worth 2 for those 2 tracks. So,
yeah. But I think it's worthier than I had anticipated. All right, I think we've done it.
So this was the 3 Thick Bricks reviewing a Jethro Tull album. I'm Adrian.
I'm Brent.
I'm Robin.
Cheerio.
See you next time. So thank you very much for listening. If you would like to leave us any comments or you would like to subscribe to this podcast, and we sincerely hope you do, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can find this podcast at www.3thickbricks.com. You can also hit us up on the Facebook page, which is at 3 Thick Bricks Podcast. And you can also send us a Gmail if you really want to at 3thickbricks@gmail.com. And all of those details will, of course, be in the show notes. So next time, we will, of course, be looking at the second album by Jethro Tull, Stand Up, and the most wonderful Stand Up, oops, spoilers, that's from 1969, and very much looking forward to chatting about that one. Until then, I'm always, as always, your co-host Robin, and on behalf of Adrian and Brent, I wish you all the very best, and see you soon. Bye.